My husband called me by his ex's name while we were in bed together. When I confronted him, he shrugged and said it happens. The next day, I showed him what really happens. My name is Tessa, and I am 32 years old. 4 years ago, I married the man I thought was my soulmate. We built a life together in Austin, Texas, and I believed we were happy. But one ordinary Friday night, everything I thought I knew about my marriage shattered into a million pieces. Before I share what happened, let me know where you are watching from today. Drop your location in the comments below, hit that like button and subscribe, if you have not already. Now let me take you back to where it all began. I met Daniel at a small coffee shop in downtown Austin 6 years ago. I was 26, fresh out of a long-term relationship that had ended badly, and I had promised myself I would focus on my career as a freelance graphic designer. Love was the last thing on my mind that rainy October afternoon. He walked in wearing a navy blue sweater that matched his striking blue-green eyes. At 6 feet 2 inches tall with dark brown hair that curled slightly at his temples, Daniel was impossible to ignore. But it was not his looks that caught my attention. It was the way he smiled at the barista, genuinely warm, as if she was an old friend rather than a stranger making his coffee. When he accidentally bumped into me while reaching for the sugar, he apologized 3 times and insisted on buying me a new latte, even though mine was perfectly fine. That was Daniel. Thoughtful, considerate, or so I believed. We talked for 4 hours that first day. He told me about his job as a software engineer at a major tech company. I told him about my dreams of starting my own design studio someday. By the time the coffee shop closed, I knew I wanted to see him again. Daniel pursued me with the kind of persistence that romance novels are made of. He remembered every small detail I mentioned. When I said I loved peonies, a bouquet appeared at my door the next week. When I mentioned my favorite childhood movie, he surprised me with a picnic and an outdoor screening. After 2 years of dating, he proposed at Lake Travis during sunset, the sky painted in shades of orange and pink, and I said yes, without hesitation. Our wedding was beautiful, intimate, just close family and friends in a garden venue outside the city. I wore my grandmother's vintage lace, and Daniel cried when he saw me walking down the aisle. I thought I was the luckiest woman alive. We bought a small house in the suburbs, charming with a wraparound porch, and enough yard space for the garden I always wanted. I planted roses pink and white and deep red, and every morning I would water them while Daniel made coffee inside. He always had my cup ready when I came in, exactly how I liked it, with a splash of oat milk and a little honey. Our life had a rhythm. Daniel left for work at 8. I settled into my home office by 9. In the evenings, we cooked dinner together, trying new recipes from whatever cuisine caught our fancy that week. Thai one week, Italian the next, sometimes attempting sushi with laughable results. We watched old movies on the couch, my head on his shoulder, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on my arm. It felt safe. It felt permanent. Of course, I knew about Meredith. Daniel had told me about her early in our relationship, the way you tell someone about your past, because honesty matters. They had dated for 5 years before me, high school sweethearts who stayed together through college and into their early 20s. According to Daniel, they broke up because they wanted different things in life. She was ambitious, always chasing the next opportunity, while he wanted to settle down and build a home. I appreciated his honesty. I did not feel threatened. Meredith had moved to Seattle after their breakup over 2,000 miles away. She was a chapter in his past, closed and finished. I never asked about the wooden box in our garage, the one tucked behind old camping gear and Christmas decorations. Everyone has mementos, I told myself. It did not mean anything. Besides, we were focused on our future. For 2 years, Daniel and I had been trying to have a baby. Every month brought hope, and then disappointment. We had seen doctors, run tests, tried timing everything perfectly. Nothing worked. The strain of infertility is something no one prepares you for. It tested us, but I believed it was making us stronger. Looking back now, I can see the signs I chose to ignore. Over the past several months, Daniel had been working late more often. His phone was always face down on the table, and he startled slightly whenever it buzzed. Sometimes during dinner, his mind seemed elsewhere. His eyes unfocused, and when I asked what he was thinking about, he would shake his head and say, "Just work stress." I believed him. Why would I not? He was my husband, the man who brought me flowers for no reason, who held my hand during every negative pregnancy test, who told me he loved me every single day. I trusted him completely, and that trust was about to cost me everything. It was a Friday evening in late September. The week had been exhausting for both of us. I had been rushing to finish a major branding project for a client, and Daniel had mentioned something about a difficult deadline at work. By the time Friday arrived, we were both ready to decompress. I decided to make the evening special. I stopped by the butcher for 2 beautiful ribeye steaks, picked up a bottle of the red wine Daniel loved, and bought vanilla-scented candles from the shop on Main Street. While Daniel was still at work, I set the table with our good dishes, the ones we only used for anniversaries and special occasions. I put on a soft playlist of acoustic covers and dimmed the lights. When Daniel walked through the door at 7, he paused in the entrance, taking in the scene. His face broke into a smile, and he held up a bouquet of sunflowers. "I thought we could both use a good night," he said. Something fluttered in my chest. This was the Daniel I fell in love with. This was my husband. Dinner was perfect. The steaks were cooked exactly right medium rare, with a herb butter that melted over the top. We talked and laughed, reminiscing about our first date, making plans for a vacation we wanted to take next spring. Maybe somewhere tropical, Daniel suggested. Cancun, or maybe the Caribbean. For the first time in weeks, I felt connected to him again. Whatever distance had been growing between us seemed to dissolve with each sip of wine, each shared smile. After dinner, we left the dishes in the sink. Daniel took my hand and led me upstairs. The bedroom was dark except for the moonlight filtering through the curtains. Everything felt romantic, intimate the way it had been in our early days together. We were close, wrapped up in each other, and I was lost in the moment. Then Daniel leaned in his lips against my ear and whispered a name. Meredith. At first, my brain refused to process it. Surely I had misheard. Surely he said something else, some word that my mind twisted in the darkness. I froze. Daniel continued as if nothing had happened, but my body had turned to stone. My heart, which seconds ago had been racing with intimacy, now pounded with a completely different kind of adrenaline. I placed my hands on his chest and pushed gently. He pulled back, confusion in his eyes. "What did you just say?" I asked. My voice came out steadier than I expected. "What do you mean?" He looked genuinely puzzled. "You said a name." I could hear the tremor creeping in now. "You said her name." "Whose name? What are you talking about?" Tessa, I sat up and reached for the bedside lamp, flooding the room with harsh light. Daniel squinted, shielding his eyes. "Meredith," I said. "You called me Meredith." For one moment his face was completely blank. Then I watched something shift behind his eyes, a flicker of recognition. He tried to hide, but could not quite manage. "No, I did not," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "I heard you, Daniel. Do not lie to me." Silence stretched between us. Finally, he sighed and ran a hand through his hair. Okay, maybe I did. I do not know. It was an accident. An accident. The word hung in the air. "How do you accidentally call your wife by your ex-girlfriend's name?" I demanded. "In bed, Daniel." "How does that happen?" He shrugged. Actually shrugged as if I had asked him why he forgot to take out the trash. "It happens," he said. "People make mistakes. You are overreacting. I am overreacting." "Tessa, come on. It did not mean anything. I do not know. Maybe I heard her name somewhere recently, and it stuck in my head. It is not a big deal." I stared at him, searching his face for some sign of remorse, some indication that he understood why this mattered. I found nothing but mild irritation at having his evening interrupted. Without another word, I got out of bed. I grabbed my pillow and the throw blanket from the chair in the corner. "Where are you going?" he asked. "I am sleeping on the couch." "Tessa, come on. This is ridiculous." But I was already walking out the door. I did not sleep that night. I lay on the sofa, staring at the ceiling, replaying his words over and over. "It happens. You are overreacting." The casual dismissal of my pain, the shrug, the irritation in his voice. None of it matched the man I thought I married. And beneath the hurt, a darker question began to surface. Was this really just an accident, or was there something more that Daniel was not telling me? By the time the first light of dawn crept through the windows, I had made a decision. I was going to find out the truth, whatever it took. I must have dozed off eventually, because I woke to the sound of the front door closing. I sat up disoriented and saw through the window that Daniel's car was already backing out of the driveway. The clock on the wall read 7:15. He had left for work early without waking me, without saying goodbye. On the kitchen counter, a single piece of paper was propped against the coffee maker. I recognized Daniel's handwriting immediately. "Sorry about last night. Let us talk later. Love you." I read those words 3 times. Love you. They should have comforted me. Instead, they felt hollow, like a script he had written because it was expected, not because it was true. I tried to work that morning. I had emails to answer, designs to review, a deadline that was not going to move itself. But every time I sat down at my computer, my mind drifted back to that moment in the dark. Meredith. The name echoed in my head like a song I could not shake. By noon, I had accomplished nothing. The cursor blinked at me from an empty document, mocking my inability to focus. Finally, I pushed back from my desk and made a decision. I needed answers, and I was not going to wait for Daniel to give them to me. The garage was dusty and cluttered with years of accumulated things we never used, but could not bring ourselves to throw away. Holiday decorations, old furniture we kept meaning to donate, boxes of books we had already read. And somewhere behind all of it, I knew there was a wooden box that Daniel thought I had forgotten about. It took me 20 minutes to find it shoved behind a camping tent we had not used since our first anniversary trip. The box was plain, maybe 10 inches square, with a small brass latch. I sat down on an overturned milk crate and opened it. Inside were exactly the kinds of things I expected. Photographs of Daniel and Meredith young and smiling at beaches and concerts and graduation ceremonies. Ticket stubs from movies. A dried flower pressed between sheets of wax paper. A braided friendship bracelet in faded colors. Normal keepsakes from a normal relationship. Nothing I had not anticipated. But then I dug deeper. Near the bottom, beneath all the nostalgic trinkets, I found a bundle of letters tied with a ribbon. They were not old and yellowed like the photographs. The paper was crisp, the ink fresh. I untied the ribbon with shaking hands. The first letter was dated 6 months ago. Daniel. I have been thinking about you constantly since I moved back. Seattle was never home. Austin is home. You are home. I know things ended badly between us, but I never stopped caring. Maybe we could meet for coffee sometime just to talk. I promise, no pressure. I just miss you. My stomach dropped. Meredith had moved back to Austin 6 months ago. The second letter was dated 2 weeks later. Seeing you yesterday was everything I hoped it would be. You looked so good, Daniel. Better than I remembered. I know you said you are married now, and I respect that. But I could see it in your eyes. You are not happy. You never could hide your feelings from me. I am here whenever you are ready to admit the truth. I read letter after letter, each one more damning than the last. They spoke of secret meetings, of conversations that stretched for hours, of feelings neither of them could deny. And then near the bottom of the stack, I found letters in Daniel's handwriting. I miss what we had. Sometimes I wonder if I made the right choice. Tessa is wonderful, but there is something missing. With you, I never had to wonder. We just fit. The paper crumpled in my fist, my vision blurred with tears I refused to let fall. Not yet. I was not finished. I thought of Daniel's old phone, the one he had upgraded from last year but never bothered to recycle. I had seen it in his desk drawer a few weeks ago when I was looking for stamps. I found it exactly where I remembered. When I pressed the power button, the screen lit up with 30% battery remaining. The passcode prompt appeared, and I typed in the numbers I knew by heart. My birthday. The same password Daniel used for everything because he said I was the most important date in his life. The irony was not lost on me. His text messages loaded slowly. I scrolled through the list of conversations until I found her name. Meredith. There were hundreds of messages spanning the last 6 months. I began to read. I cannot stop thinking about last night. Being with you feels like coming home. You make me remember who I used to be. Before everything got so complicated, I told Tessa I had a work dinner. We have the whole evening. The messages painted a picture of a secret life I never knew existed. Dinners at restaurants across town where nobody would recognize them. afternoon coffee at obscure cafes, and hotels. Multiple hotel receipts forwarded via email dates that corresponded with nights Daniel said he was traveling for work. But the message that destroyed me most was one from just a week ago. Meredith had written, "When are you going to tell her?" And Daniel had replied, "Soon. I promise. I just need to figure out how to do it without losing everything." I set the phone down carefully as if it might explode. My hands were steady now, eerily calm. The tears had dried somewhere along the way, replaced by something colder, harder. He was going to leave me. He had been planning it for who knows how long, carrying on with her behind my back, while I cooked his dinners and washed his clothes and cried into my pillow every time another pregnancy test came back negative. I sat on the floor of our home office for a long time staring at nothing. Then slowly, I pulled myself to my feet. I was not going to cry anymore. I was not going to be the betrayed wife who crumbled and begged. I was going to show Daniel exactly what happens when you lie to someone who trusted you with everything. I took 3 deep breaths, then 3 more. The phone was still in my hand, the evidence of Daniel's betrayal glowing on the screen. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw things. I wanted to call him at work and unleash every bit of pain and rage building inside me. But I did not. Instead, I went to the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes were red from crying I did not remember doing. My hair was tangled, still uncombed from sleeping on the couch. I looked exactly like what I was, a woman who had just discovered her entire life was built on lies. "I will not be a victim," I said to my reflection. My voice was hoarse, but steady. "I will take control." I washed my face with cold water. I brushed my hair and pulled it back into a neat ponytail. I changed out of my rumpled clothes into something clean. Small actions, but they helped. Each one was a tiny reclamation of the self that had been shattered an hour ago. Then I picked up my phone and called Harper. Harper Reynolds had been my best friend since college. We met freshman year when we were assigned as roommates and discovered we both had terrible taste in boys and excellent taste in pizza toppings. She became a family law attorney, and over the years I had watched her help countless friends through divorces, custody battles, and every kind of domestic mess imaginable. "I never thought I would need her professional expertise," she answered on the second ring. "Tessa, I was just thinking about you. Want to grab lunch this week, Harper?" My voice cracked despite my best efforts. "I need your help." The shift in her tone was immediate. "What happened? Are you okay?" "Is it Daniel?" I told her everything. The name in the dark, the shrug and the dismissal, the letters and the texts and the hotels. She listened without interrupting, only making small sounds of acknowledgement to let me know she was still there. When I finished, there was a long pause. First, she said, her voice careful and professional, "I am so sorry. I know how much you loved him. I thought I did. Second, do not confront him yet. Not until you have protected yourself legally and financially. Do you understand?" I nodded, even though she could not see me. "Yes. Tell me what to do." She walked me through the basics. Document everything she said, photographs of the letters, screenshots of the texts, bank statements, any evidence of him spending marital money on her. Texas is a community property state, so theoretically everything gets split 50-50, but evidence of infidelity can influence how assets are divided. "Do you remember how much of the down payment on your house came from your inheritance? $40,000? From my grandmother. Good. That is separate property if you can prove it. Do you have the records? I think so. My mom might have copies too." Harper gave me the name and number of a divorce attorney she trusted. Amanda Chen. She is one of the best in Austin. Tell her I sent you, and she will fit you in fast. After we hung up, I sat with the phone in my lap for a long moment. Divorce. The word felt alien, something that happened to other people. Not to Tessa, who did everything right. Not to the woman who planted roses and made Sunday pancakes and never went to bed angry. But that woman had been married to someone who did not exist. The Daniel I loved was a character in a story he had been telling me for 6 years. The real Daniel was a liar and a cheat, and I owed him nothing. I called Amanda Chen. Her receptionist said she had a cancellation that afternoon at 3. 2 hours from now. I will be there, I said. Amanda Chen's office was in a sleek building downtown, all glass and steel and expensive modern furniture. She was a petite woman in her early 50s with sharp eyes behind stylish glasses and silver-streaked black hair cut in a precise bob. When she shook my hand, her grip was firm and confident. "Tell me everything," she said once we were seated. So I did. For the second time that day, I laid out the whole sordid story. Amanda took notes on a legal pad, occasionally asking clarifying questions, but mostly letting me talk. When I finished, she set down her pen. "You have a strong case," she said. "The evidence of infidelity is extensive. Combined with your separate property claim on the down payment, I expect we can negotiate terms significantly in your favor." "I want the house," I said, "or fair compensation for my share." "We will fight for that." She explained the process to me. Filing serving papers, mediation, potential court dates. It all sounded overwhelming, but Amanda's calm confidence was reassuring. One more thing she said as I was preparing to leave. "How do you plan to tell him I'd been thinking about that all afternoon?" A direct confrontation seemed inadequate. Too easy for him to spin to minimize to make me seem like the hysterical wife who could not let go of a simple mistake. And then, an idea began to form. "His parents," I said slowly. "Daniel is terrified of disappointing his parents. They never liked Meredith. If they found out what he has been doing..." Amanda nodded thoughtfully. "I am not going to tell you what to do in terms of personal confrontations. That is your decision. But if you are going to do something, do it before we file. Once papers are served, communication becomes more complicated. Tomorrow," I said. "I am going to do it tomorrow." That evening I prepared. I downloaded every piece of evidence onto a secure cloud account Daniel did not know about. I made physical copies of the most damning letters. I tested the iPad to make sure the photos and screenshots displayed clearly. And I called my mother-in-law. "Susan," I said, keeping my voice light. "I was wondering if you and Richard would like to come to dinner tomorrow night. Nothing fancy, just family time. I feel like we have not seen you in too long." "Oh, sweetheart, that sounds lovely," Susan said. She had always liked me, always treated me like the daughter she never had. The thought of what I was about to reveal, what it would do to her image of her son, made my heart ache. But she deserved to know. They all did. "We will be there at 6, Susan said. "Should I bring anything, just yourselves. And maybe your appetite. I am planning something special." When Daniel came home that night, he found me in the kitchen, cheerfully preparing a marinade for tomorrow's dinner. "What is all this?" he asked. I smiled at him. The smile felt strange on my face, like wearing someone else's clothes. "I invited your parents for dinner tomorrow. I thought we could use some family time after the week we have had." Daniel hesitated. "About last night?" "It is fine," I said, waving my hand dismissively. "You were right. I overreacted. Let us just move past it." Relief washed over his features. "Really? That is great, Tessa. I am glad you understand." "Oh," I thought as I turned back to my marinade. "I understand perfectly." Sunday arrived gray and overcast, the sky heavy with clouds that threatened rain, but never delivered. I woke early and began preparing. The menu was elaborate: rosemary roasted chicken, garlic mashed potatoes, roasted vegetables with balsamic glaze, homemade dinner rolls. Daniel's favorites, every single one. A last supper of sorts. He wandered into the kitchen around 10 still in his pajamas and kissed my cheek. "Something smells amazing already." I smiled and handed him a cup of coffee, just trying to make today special. He had no idea how special it was going to be. The afternoon passed in a blur of cooking and cleaning. I set the dining room table with our wedding china-lit candles, arranged a centerpiece of autumn flowers. Everything looked perfect, elegant, like a photograph from a lifestyle magazine. Daniel showered and changed into a button-down shirt, putting in more effort than he had in months. He was relaxed, even cheerful, clearly believing that his mistake from Friday night had been forgiven and forgotten. At 6 o'clock precisely, the doorbell rang. Richard and Susan Parker were in their early 60s, a handsome couple who had been married for 37 years. Richard was a retired accountant, tall and reserved with the same blue-green eyes he had passed down to his son. Susan was warmer, more expressive, with silver blonde hair and a ready laugh. They came bearing a bottle of wine and a bouquet of chrysanthemums. "Tessa, you look wonderful," Susan said, embracing me. "This is such a treat." "Thank you for coming on short notice," I said. "Please come in." Dinner started beautifully. The food was praised, wine was poured, conversation flowed. We talked about Richard's golf game, Susan's book club, a trip they were planning to visit Susan's sister in Florida. Daniel held my hand under the table, squeezing it occasionally as if to say, "See, everything is fine." After the main course, I cleared the plates and brought out dessert, a homemade apple pie with vanilla ice cream. Everyone exclaimed over it. I served generous slices and returned to my seat. Then I set down my fork. Before we finish, I said, my voice calm and clear, there is something I need to share with everyone. The table went quiet. Daniel looked at me, a flicker of confusion crossing his face. "Is everything all right?" Susan asked. I reached beneath my chair where I'd hidden the iPad earlier. "Daniel," I said, turning to face him directly, "I think you should tell your parents what happened Friday night." His face went pale. "Tessa, what are you doing? I am giving you the chance to be honest. For once." The silence was suffocating. Richard and Susan exchanged worried glances. "Will someone please explain what is going on?" Richard said. Daniel was frozen, staring at me with a mixture of fear and disbelief. When it became clear he was not going to speak, I took a breath and began. "On Friday night, I said my husband called me by his ex-girlfriend's name, Meredith's name. When I confronted him about it, he shrugged and said, 'It happens.'" Susan gasped softly. Richard's expression hardened. "But that is not all," I continued. "I found out that Meredith moved back to Austin 6 months ago, and Daniel has been seeing her in secret ever since." "That is not true." Daniel finally found his voice. "Tessa, why are you doing this?" I turned on the iPad and slid it across the table. "Is it not true? Then explain these." The screen showed the first photograph, a letter in Daniel's handwriting dated 4 months ago. I miss what we had. Sometimes I wonder if I made the right choice. Susan picked up the iPad with trembling hands. Richard leaned over to read alongside her. As they scrolled through the images, letters from both Daniel and Meredith, screenshots of text messages, hotel receipts, their faces cycled through shock denial, and finally devastation. Susan whispered, her voice breaking. "How could you?" "Mom, it is not what you think. We were just talking. I was confused." "Confused," Richard repeated. The word was sharp, accusatory. "For 6 months, meeting her at hotels was just talking." He thrust the iPad toward Daniel, showing the receipt from a downtown hotel dated just 3 weeks ago. Daniel's shoulders sagged. For the first time all evening, he had nothing to say. I spoke again, keeping my tone measured. "I have already contacted a divorce attorney. The papers will be ready this week. I wanted you to hear the truth from us before everything becomes official." Susan stood up from the table, tears streaming down her face. She walked around to where I sat and pulled me into a tight embrace. "I am so sorry, sweetheart," she said. "I am so sorry. You deserve so much better than this." Richard remained seated, but his gaze on Daniel was withering. "That Meredith woman," he said flatly. "After everything she did to you the first time. We told you, Daniel. We warned you she was poison." "Wait," I said. "What do you mean?" The first time Richard and Susan exchanged a look. It was Susan who answered, still holding my hand. "Meredith cheated on Daniel when they were together," she said quietly. "Multiple times. We never liked her. When they finally broke up, we thought he had finally come to his senses. And then he met you, and we were so happy, Tessa. We thought he had finally found someone good." The revelation hit me strangely. All this time I had assumed Daniel left Meredith because they wanted different things. The truth was far uglier. She broke his heart, Richard said, and he went back to her anyway. After finding someone like you. He shook his head in disgust. "I do not understand you, son. I truly do not." Daniel sat motionless, staring at his untouched dessert. When he finally spoke, his voice was small. "Tessa, please. I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. But we can work through this." I stood up, removing Susan's hand gently. "You said it happens," I reminded him. "Well, this is what happens when you betray someone who loved you with everything she had. I will not be your backup plan. I will not be the wife you settled for while you pined for someone else. And I will not spend another day pretending that what we had was real." I looked at Richard and Susan one last time. "Thank you for being like family to me. I am sorry it ended this way." Then I walked out of the dining room, leaving Daniel alone with the wreckage of his choices. The days after that dinner passed in a strange sort of blur. Daniel moved out the next morning packing a suitcase and leaving while I sat in the garden with my cold coffee, watching the roses sway in the breeze. He went to stay with a coworker, someone from his office whose name I never bothered to learn. He tried calling me, dozens of times in the first week alone. My phone buzzed constantly with texts ranging from desperate apologies to frustrated demands that I at least talk to him. After the 10th voicemail, I blocked his number. The silence that followed was the most peaceful thing I had felt in months. My attorney Amanda moved quickly. The divorce papers were drawn up within a week, citing irreconcilable differences. In Texas, we could finalize within 60 days if both parties agreed. Daniel, still hoping to salvage something initially resisted. He kept telling Amanda's office that he wanted couples counseling, that he wanted a chance to make things right. I had his answer forwarded to me. I read it once, then deleted it. There is nothing to make right, I told Amanda during our next meeting. The marriage was a lie. I want it over. She nodded. Understood. Meredith called me exactly once. It was 2 weeks after the dinner on a Tuesday afternoon when I was trying to focus on a design project that felt meaningless. I did not recognize the number and answered without thinking. Tessa. It was her voice, smoother than I expected, almost conversational, as if we were old acquaintances catching up. I think we should talk. I do not have anything to say to you. Look, I know you are upset. But you need to understand Daniel was never happy with you. Not really. He was just going through the motions, trying to be the person his parents wanted him to be. With me, he is himself. I let her words settle. Then I responded. If he was so unhappy, he should have been honest. Instead, he lied to my face for 6 months while I held his hand through fertility treatments and cooked his dinners and believed every word out of his mouth. That is not love. That is cowardice. And if you think he will not eventually do the same to you, you are fooling yourself. Silence. Goodbye, Meredith. I hung up before she could reply. The divorce was finalized 3 months after Daniel moved out. With Amanda's help and the evidence I had gathered, the settlement was more than fair. I received a significant portion of the equity in the house, plus compensation for my separate property contribution. Daniel kept his retirement accounts. I kept mine. Clean. Done. The reactions from our friends and family fell predictably along expected lines. My parents flew in from California the weekend after I told them, my mother crying, and my father awkwardly offering to have a talk with Daniel. Harper organized a girls' night with our college friends, complete with wine and chocolate, and the kind of righteous anger that only true friends can provide. Richard and Susan surprised me. They called a week after the dinner to apologize not for Daniel, but for themselves. We should have seen it, Susan said. The signs were there. He was pulling away from you, from us. We just did not want to believe it. This is not your fault, I told her. He is a grown man. He made his choices. You are still family to us, Richard added. That does not change because our son is an idiot. I laughed despite myself. The first real laugh in weeks. The news about Daniel and Meredith traveled fast. They made their relationship official almost immediately, as if they had been waiting for the ink on the divorce papers to dry. Part of me felt vindicated. The other part just felt tired. But the universe has a strange sense of justice. 3 months after they went public, Harper called me with news. You are not going to believe this, she said. Meredith cheated on him. I stopped mid-step. What, apparently, she met someone at a conference in Chicago. Daniel found out when he saw the texts on her phone. Sound familiar? I sat down slowly. He called my office yesterday, Harper continued, asking if there was any chance you would take him back. I told him I would pass along the message, but between us I think he already knows the answer. He made his choice, I said. Now he gets to live with it. And that was the truth. I did not feel triumphant or gleeful. I did not celebrate his downfall. I just felt finished. The chapter was closed and I was ready to move on. I started rebuilding. Small things at first. I redecorated the house painting over the walls Daniel had chosen with colors I loved. Soft sage green in the living room, Warm terracotta in the kitchen. I hired a landscaper to help reimagine the garden, planting new varieties I had never tried before. Lavender and wildflowers, and a little herb section outside the kitchen window. I took on new design projects, bigger ones with higher profiles. My work had always been good, but now there was something different about it. A freedom. I was not designing around Daniel's schedule or his opinions anymore. I was creating for myself. I traveled alone for the first time in my adult life. A weekend trip to Santa Fe, then a week in San Diego, then a solo adventure to the Grand Canyon. Standing at the edge of that vast, ancient expanse, I felt something shift inside me. The world was so much bigger than one failed marriage, so much bigger than Daniel and Meredith, and all the lies between us. I enrolled in an evening art class on a whim, watercolors taught at a small studio downtown. I had always loved painting, but never made time for it when I was busy being someone's wife. Now I had nothing but time. And that is where I met Marcus. 1 year later, I sit in my new apartment, a cozy space on the 3rd floor of a converted Victorian. The morning light streams through tall windows, catching the dust motes that drift lazily through the air. On my desk sits a framed photograph from the Grand Canyon, my solo trip. My face sunburned and grinning beneath a wide-brimmed hat. I sold the house eventually. It held too many memories, too many ghosts. With the proceeds, I bought this apartment outright and invested the rest. For the first time in my adult life, my finances belong entirely to me. The roses from my old garden are gone now, belonging to the new owners, a young couple expecting their first child. But on my small balcony, new plants are thriving. Herbs in terracotta, pots of climbing jasmine that scents the evening air, and yes, one stubborn little rosebush that I am determined to keep alive. The journey to get here was not easy. Those first months after the divorce were brutal. I went to therapy, something I should have done years ago, and spent countless hours untangling the knots of my self-worth from Daniel's approval. My therapist helped me understand that his betrayal was not a reflection of my value. He did not cheat because I was lacking. He cheated because something was broken inside him. That distinction saved me. I stopped asking myself what I did wrong and started asking what I wanted for my future. The answers came slowly at first, then faster. I wanted peace. I wanted authenticity. I wanted to build a life that was mine alone, not contingent on someone else's presence. And eventually I wanted to love again. But carefully this time. Eyes wide open. Marcus appeared in my life like a gentle surprise. We met in the watercolor class, both of us beginners, both of us making spectacular messes of our still life assignments. He was a pediatrician, kind-faced with gray-streaked temples and a laugh that came easily. When he suggested coffee after class one evening, I said yes before I could overthink it. We took things slowly. I told him about Daniel, about the betrayal and the divorce, and he listened without judgment. He had his own history, a marriage that ended amicably after they realized they had grown into different people. No drama, no villains, just two adults who chose to part as friends. It is possible, he told me, to end things with grace. Maybe, I said, but I am still learning how to trust again. He took my hand. Then we will take it one day at a time. And we have. Almost 8 months now of Sunday brunches and evening walks and quiet nights watching old movies on the couch. He does not rush me. He does not push. When I need space, he gives it willingly. When I am ready to be close, he opens his arms. I do not know what the future holds for us. I have learned the hard way that promises are fragile things. But I know that this time, I am entering with my eyes open and my heart protected. As for Daniel, I hear about him occasionally through the grapevine. He and Meredith split up definitively after her affair. Last I heard, he was dating someone new, another woman who probably believes she is the one who will finally make him faithful. I hope for her sake I am wrong. I do not hate him anymore. That surprised me, the gradual fading of anger into something more like indifference. Holding on to rage was exhausting, like carrying a boulder everywhere I went. At some point, I just set it down. I just set. Not because he deserved forgiveness, but because I deserved freedom. Forgiveness, I have learned, is not about the other person. It is about releasing yourself from the prison of resentment. I can acknowledge that Daniel hurt me profoundly, while also choosing not to let that hurt define the rest of my life. The bitterness is gone. In its place is something lighter, clearer. Wisdom, maybe. Or just hard-won peace. Sometimes I think about that night, the moment he whispered her name in the dark. At the time, it felt like the end of everything. Now I understand it was actually a beginning. The beginning of my real life, the one I was meant to live all along. My husband called me by his ex's name, and I lost a marriage, but I found something more valuable. I found myself. My strength, my worth, my capacity to survive things I never imagined I could face. I discovered that I am capable of standing alone, of making hard choices, of walking away from a life that looked perfect on the outside, but was hollow at its core. If you are going through something similar, I want you to know this. You are stronger than you think. The pain you feel right now is real and valid, but it is not forever. On the other side of heartbreak is freedom. On the other side of betrayal is wisdom. On the other side of loss is the chance to rebuild something better. Do not let anyone convince you that you are overreacting. Do not let anyone tell you that it happens. Your feelings matter. Your boundaries matter. You matter. I am proof that you can survive the worst day of your life and come out the other side not just intact, but transformed. Better. Stronger. More fully yourself than you have ever been. So if you are watching this and you are hurting, know that I see you. I was you. And I promise it gets better. Now I have a question for you. Have you ever had someone try to minimize your pain by saying it happens, or you are overreacting? How did you handle it? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. Let us support each other. If this story touched you, please give it a like and share it with someone who might need to hear it today. Subscribe to this channel so you do not miss future stories, and hit that notification bell so you are the first to know when new content drops. Thank you for being here with me. Thank you for listening. I am sending love to everyone who is healing, everyone who is fighting, everyone who is learning to put themselves first. Until next time, take care of yourself. You deserve it.